please. Good evening and welcome to this very special evening on political cartooning. I'm Richard Parker. I'm Senior Fellow at the Shorenstein Center and will be the host of this evening's conversation. Before we start, I just have a couple of brief announcements. Following the enormous success of the Barbra Streisand event here at the Kennedy School recently, President Rudenstein has authorized the following. First, Cher will be delivering the first No Bono Publico address on April 15th. On April 27th, visiting lecturer Sharon Stone will speak on economics and instincts, taking revealed preference seriously. Professor Zeckhauser and Stavens will be speaking on the subject, There Is No Free Willy, costing out aquatic mammalian habitats and the J-curve. Professor Ron Heifetz will be speaking at the end of the month on Steven Spielberg, David Geffen, and Jeff Katzenberg. Are they the Washington, Jefferson, and Madison of our generation, or just the Larry, Moe, and Curly Joe? Finally, and this is with some deep personal regret, as I know it must be for all of us at the Shorenstein Center, Marvin Kalb will not be returning next year, but I do believe you will all welcome Professor Ricky Lake as the new director of our program. With those following announcements, let me turn to introducing the panel here at hand. First, we have Doug Marlette, who will be speaking first this evening on my immediate left. Doug is the former Nieman Fellow at Harvard University and in 1988 won the Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning, the first and only cartoonist, I want to note, to be awarded a Nieman Fellowship at Harvard. He'll be followed by Jeff Danziger, then by Paul Zepp, Edda Holm, and Jerry Holbert in that order, and I hope you'll all give them a rousing hand of welcome as we start this special evening of editorial cartooning at the Kennedy School. Thank you. Come on up.
Thank you. I always feel that cartoons should be seen and not heard. So I'm going to show you some cartoons. One thing I should fill in the bio information that was left out. I was born into a family of timber wolves, but I was kidnapped at an early age by a marauding band of Southern debutantes, and it's true. I lived among them and learned their ways. And you probably don't know this here in Boston and Cambridge, but do you know the mating call of the Southern debutante? Anybody know this? I'm so drunk. Anyway, just wanted to enlighten you. But let me show you a couple of cartoons, and if I can figure out how we do this. They gave us lots of instructions about showing these. I drew this first cartoon on George Bush during the '88 campaign when he was being haunted by the what they called the wimp factor. He was perceived as kind of a wuss during the campaign. So let's see if we can get this there. Whoops, sorry. Let's back up. Weenies. It's trapped in a package of weenies. I'm going to move through these at warp speed because we have a lot to cover tonight. But so here is Bill and Hillary. Right after Hillary went to work on the health. Boy, I keep jumping here on this the slide thing. There you go. Not tonight, dear. I've got a hearing. And then when Whitewater broke, it prompted this next drawing. Say, Mr. President, wasn't it somewhere along about here that they shot the love scene from Deliverance? Recently, the State of the Union address, this is after the after the recent election prompted this. My fellow Republicans. Of course, we're not always drawing about presidents or politicians. We, general social issues. Next drawing was done after the Alaskan oil spill, the Exxon Valdez. Regular or unleaded? When they started shooting at each other on the Los Angeles freeways, I drew this. I'm going to pass the Toyota, honey, cover me. Biological sciences and advances in genetics prompted this. Don't blame me, you're the one who insisted on a frozen embryo. Along those lines, here's a card shop, a Hallmark. Birthdays, Mother's Day, surrogate Mother's Day, test tube babies, frozen embryos, anonymous sperm bank donors. Why, when I was a boy, we were so bad off, we didn't have a single celebrity interested in our plight. The disparity in pay for men and women for the same jobs in this country prompted this, the first dollar and first 59 cents. Sports gives us a lot of material. Here's sorry kid, you're disqualified. They found out about the steroids. God, I hate to see a woman cry. As like class valedictorian, I was trying to think, in my head, like what to say in junk. And, like it's really weird, but 12 years of public education, I mean, whoa. Anyway, that's what I think in my head, Here's, remember when the safety patrol just helped us cross the street? How lower life forms divide. Amoebas, paramecia, and Roseanne and Tom Arnold. Now, this next drawing was done after the Japanese said that Americans were lazy workers, and I drew this. And this cartoon was not run in my newspaper. This was one that was censored, and I know people like to see the work that doesn't make it into the paper. Here's one of them. Buy America. Next drawing also was censored or kept out of the paper at Newsday. And it was after Howard Stern, the shock jock radio personality, announced for the governorship in New York to run against Cuomo. And drew this. It looks like a challenge to Cuomo's leadership, only smaller. Then last summer I did a drawing on the Pope, his position on women priests, and this caused a great uproar in Long Island. Upon this rock I will build my church. No women priests. And lots of Catholics in Long Island swamped the paper with protests, and Newsday apologized for this cartoon, and then they invited me to write a response to the apology. I started out drawing cartoons in North Carolina the same year Jesse Helms was elected senator there. And so we kind of grew together in office. And early on, I was not especially, he used to ask for the originals, and so that tells me I wasn't very effective. After a while, he stopped asking for the originals. There's no better way to demoralize a cartoonist than to have your target ask for the original. But Helm stopped asking, and I drew lots on him over the years. The next one was done when he was spearheading the anti-Martin Luther King holiday drive in the Senate. He was trying to stop that. I suggest a national holiday honoring Senator Jesse Helms, April Fool's Day. And then in 1984, this was Helms ran against Jim Hunt in North Carolina, and at that point, this was the most negative campaign in history, and the most money spent on a Senate race. At that time, it set the tone for negativity, and Helms won by a slim margin, and I celebrated victory with this cartoon, Carolina Moon Keeps Shining. Now, working in Charlotte, we had Jim and Tammy Baker at PTL, and I did lots of cartoons on them, but this general one I did on electronic religion. during that time. Probably the most positive reaction on a cartoon I got was on after the Challenger went down, and I drew a drawing commemorating that the next day. This is it. I heard about this, like everyone, around lunchtime. Knew I had to draw something for the next day. An editor came into my office at 1 o'clock and said, have you heard we're going to have a special edition of the paper? And it's going to be on the streets at 3 o'clock, and so if you want anything in it, you need to finish it, and you got 45 minutes. So I drew this up quickly, and it ran that afternoon. It ran the next morning. When I came to work around 6 in the morning, I had flowers from a bouquet of flowers from anonymous readers, people calling in, weeping on the phone, thanking me for the drawing. Generally, cartoonists don't get bouquets or that kind of response. So I knew something was up, and they were requesting copies. The editors printed up 500 copies, ran a little italic note on the op-ed page saying if people were interested, they could come down to the Observer offices in downtown Charlotte, pick up a copy, and those 500 were gone by 10 o'clock that morning, and they printed another 1,000. They were gone by 2 o'clock, another 1,000 were gone by 4 o'clock, and it was like that for a week or so. Downtown, they began mailing them out and sent them to the families of the astronauts, and to date they've distributed over 70,000 copies. Ross Perot has given us lots of material, sound bites. Saw Pat Buchanan announced today, 4 years ago he was running right after David Duke had run a short run for the presidency. I drew this Duke and Duke Light. During the Persian Gulf War, we have this. And now, there's a basic rule for cartoonists: bad times for the Republic are good times for cartoonists. All of us here look at national trauma and disaster kind of the way a plastic surgeon looks at cellulite or crow's feet. It's too bad, it's unfortunate, but it's a living. And and luckily for us, we get people like Newt Gingrich every now and then who gives us lots of material. Here's Boys Town starring Newt Gingrich. There you have Rush Limbaugh, Strom Thurmond, Tomato Doll, etc. You could draw every day on Newt, and that's what, you've got a good topic, a good subject there. Here, my mom can beat up your mom, he sent to Chelsea. His war on the arts prompted this drawing, the NEA. Here is culture and counterculture. You recall Gingrich said the White House was full of counterculture McGovernites. And then the war on the school lunch programs prompted this. Yo, kid, hand over your lunch money. Anyway, that I will wrap up here and we'll move along. Next.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Jeff Danziger, the editorial page cartoonist for the Christian Science Monitor. Before that, he was with the New York Daily News editorial page and freelanced for the New York Times op-ed section, the Washington Post, the LA Times, and others. Jeff Danziger.
Somebody mentioned before that to go from the New York Daily News to the Christian Science Monitor was something of a culture warp. And it was. Most of our editorials and editorial commentaries are about international subjects, and very often in cartooning, someone else has to set up the joke for you. And since Americans don't, with the exception of this crowd right here, don't pay very much attention to things outside of our borders, it's kind of difficult to set it up, except for the Serbs, of course, and most of the... Where's the thing you pointed at? Oh, I'm sorry. Aim here, that's right. Most of these are about the Serbs. We're very grateful to Milosevic and Radovan Karadzic and so on and so forth. This is the... we're sorry, we hit a UN convoy. We thought they were civilians. This is just an example of the more horrific things get, in some ways, the more, if not humorous, at least the reaction to it has got to be laughter. This is Jimmy Carter when he made his trip. Mr. Karadich says that after this is all over, he'd love to teach your Sunday school class. A lot of this is blamed on, this is Karadich and Milosevic. Actually, we both had abused childhoods. It's kind of an interesting thing that Karadzic's interesting hairdo, his hair is set by his daughter, who is a hairdresser.
Visually challenged.
He's visually challenged hairdresser. I don't know why anybody's unhappy with the UN safe areas, says one Serb to another. I feel completely safe. And this looks like Karadich, but it's actually supposed to be Newt Gingrich. The new dictum in American politics is, instead of I feel your pain, it's you feel your pain. I don't know if you can read this. This is the Clinton view of the world. And one for the cows. I've lived in Vermont for some time, and I love to draw cows. Well, I, for one, would like to know how Hillary made all that money in cattle futures. This is the Mexican leaving El Paso and entering El Peso. This is another of my favorites. This is Zhirinovsky reacting to rumors that he is Jewish. Vladimir Zhirinovsky immediately solves the problem by throwing rocks at himself. And finally, this did not run in the Christian Science Monastery for obvious reasons. I thought I'd bring it in as well. This is on our late great president, Richard M. Nixon, saying, I knew it was you." Thank you very much.
Paul Zepp, our next cartoonist, has been working in cartoons, he says, since he was 16 years old. He graduated from the Ontario College of Art, and prior to joining the Boston Globe, was editorial cartoonist with the Financial Post in Toronto. He's won 2 Pulitzer Prizes and the prestigious Rubin Award for editorial cartooning from the National Cartoonist Society. He's also has been a visiting fellow here at the Institute of Politics. Paul.
I'm going to defy that logic that, was it Jerry Ford said you can't walk and chew gum? I'm going to have a hard time working this. And, there's like 50 million people in this country who work for the government. I'm a political cartoonist. I work against the government. Actually, we're probably, I think history will show that, and my colleagues here will probably agree that in the future, the new years to cartoonists will probably have been to what the plague was to undertakers. So we all have very high hopes of the next few years. And anyway. Oh. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to put this in to say that I was fair. Everything's, and that is my best side. This is Newt Dole, Jesse Thurman, and the boys all taking Bubba on his wild 2-year ride. And that's with Bubba still thinking that he's at the wheel. And speaking of Bubba, this is the President's Hotspots. I don't know whether you can, that's Paula Jones calling there on the right, collect. Another fine mess you've got us into, Hillary. Now, it seems like everybody's consumed by sex these days. Cartoonists are no different. This is the Prince of Wales talking to his girlfriend in Home Alone 3. Survey by University of Chicago finds Americans unexpectedly conservative in their sexual habits. I think actually if men did get pregnant, abortion wouldn't be an issue in this country. This was around the time that George Foreman won the heavyweight championship despite his less than svelte body, and it brought to mind our own Rubenesque 62-year-old senator, heavyweight senator, who won his 6th defense of his title. Teddy actually asked for a copy of this, first time in 30 years, I think. Now this is just on greed. The caption here is, "Now who are the players and who are the owners here?" Actually, Bill Usry, I did give Bill Usry the original of this. Apparently he was not a happy camper at the White House that week. Now this is, freedom of the press is as free as the owner wants it to be. This is my, like my friends here, this is one that didn't make the Globe. The line is, "Tell James Porter there are no 14-year-old all boys in here." Thank you. Thanks very much.
Edda Holm is a native of the Lone Star State and our most distant traveler of the evening. She graduated from the University of Texas and actually began her career in animation at the Walt Disney Studios at the end of the Second World War. In fact, was drawing cartoons at the time that Richard Nixon was first elected to public office, joining at the hip of some sort. She first began editorial cartooning in the Texas Observer, and in 1987 was made president of the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists. Since 1972, she's been the editorial cartoonist for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Out of Hume.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome, ma'am.
I think I'll just jump right in here. I come from Fort Worth, Texas, where we have a lot of issues that are pretty important to us, like Dead Serious. Have you heard of Dead Serious? You pay $10, you get a bumper sticker, and if you kill somebody who's done something wrong, you get $5,000. I think they went out of business. And we got no pass, no play. We take our high school football very seriously in Texas, and kids started playing football on Friday night and flunking the courses, and we just had to. That was Ross Perot's idea, and I hate to give him credit for anything, but he he liked no pass, no play. Well, we're about to reverse that now, I'm happy to say. And, and also, you know about the ballpark in Arlington. I live in Arlington. I'm paying for that ballpark, and we're not going to have a game this year, I guess. I'm looking for a replacement taxpayer. And, of course, we got George, as Molly Ivins says, Shrub Bush for governor. So there's hope for editorial cartoonists in Texas. I think I'll just see if I can hit aim here. I can't. Yeah, oh, I had something there a minute.
Don't shoot an endangered
There it is.
species.
There it is. I'm not over there. Yeah, I am. So that's just Bill Clinton with his Mexican crisis, and Congress is approaching him from the rear. And this is an old one, but it still applies. This is Yugoslavia destroying itself. And the cartoon's a couple of years old, but I hope it doesn't last too much longer. This is, Aren't You My Mother? I try to avoid labels. That's a GOP platform. And this one, this is something that's always bothered me, you know. Mark my words, the day will come when good people won't be willing to serve in government. I've never believed that threat. And here this is a subject. I love the CIA. You gave me a scare, Agent Doe. For a minute there, I thought you were a female. You know, they had the mole for all these years, but no women. And another, on a more serious note, he says this is a family affair. It almost always ends the same way. Usually he says he's really sorry. Last time he even brought me flowers. And Edward has been praying for the First Amendment. And this is still life with politics. Newt is biologically driven to go out and hunt gaffs. And one over here says, can we get this stricken from the record? And Newt curtails the giraffe chase to pursue other interests. It's a school lunch program. And that's all, folks.
Jerry Holbert has been an editorial cartoonist for the Boston Herald since 1986. Before that, he worked with the Disney Channel's animation studios in Florida. He's freelanced for a number of newspapers and businesses, including the Associated Press. Jerry Holbert.
Thank you. It is an honor to be here. I usually don't get out to talk about editorial cartooning too much. I sit in my little space, I draw them, I turn them in at the end of the day, and I go home. And sometimes I get home and turn on the news and see them again when people are protesting about them. That's happened a couple of times. I will get right to it because talking about cartooning is difficult. I hope I can aim this in the right place. Let's see. It says, yeah, there we go. I enjoy the relationship that's developed between the GOP and the president. So a lot of what I'm going to show you tonight is recent stuff that I've done. And as you can see, that's a blender for life, and the elephant saying you should jump. Here we have the GOP wanting to overturn the assault weapons. So there's a good reason why they would like to, because so often people are shooting at the White House these days. This is about downsizing government. I don't know what else I can say about that. This is about welfare. It's called the spelling bee. The teacher says, okay, can you spell welfare? And the GOP says F-A-R-E-W-E-L-L, which spells farewell. I like drawing elephants. I'm very... Gingrich wants to eliminate federal funding for PBS. Here we have Big Bird asking at the PBS studios, say, do we have a new cooking show on? And the producer saying, no, why? This made my children happy, except they didn't understand what it meant. This is about President Clinton announcing he's going to run again. So I simply have it, might I suggest you wear a different brand sweatshirt for the next, yeah, and there he's wearing the bum sweatshirt, which... And this is just about the Clinton administration, basically. It's a policy meeting. You have Bill Clinton up there saying, gee, I don't know who did what with what weapon in any room. Christopher saying, me either. Another man saying ditto, and they're all playing the no clue game. And this is the last one. I'm going to try to keep it short. This is about the Cuban situation with all the people coming over in boats and the Clinton administration not knowing what to do about it. So here I have Bill Clinton walking into his bathroom, and they're even in the bathtub. So it says, boy, this Cuban situation really is getting out of hand. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to open this up for questioning. Politics has been generally humorous for the last few years, but these 5 people have certainly made it this evening a lot more humorous. And I'd like to take questions from the audience. Yeah, right over here.
This comes from someone who had a hard enough time coming up with one idea a week for a town newspaper when I was in college, doing a little political cartooning on the side. Wherever do you get all the ideas to keep this up and produce your work as often as you do? That goes to all of you, but I think especially to Mr. Marlette, because you, sir, aside from Dave McNally in Richmond, who does Shoe as well as editorial cartoons, is the only person I know of who keeps a daily comic strip and editorial cartoons coming out at a prodigious rate.
So where do we get our ideas? That's the question?
The ideas and the energy.
You know, I think it's all individual, and every cartoonist works differently, so everybody would have to speak to it, but everyone's approach is just like our cartoons are like our own thumbprints, and for me, I've always thought of cartooning as more about kind of developing a way of thinking. It has more to do with that than it does with drawing. You find that there are lots of people who can draw. When I was in art school or in taking art in high school and college, there were lots of people who could draw a lot better than me. But I found that I think looking at things in a particular way or seeing things in a kind of a twisted, distorted, weird way is where the ideas come from. You just learn to think that way. And when I first started, it took me all day long to think of a political cartoon idea. It's hard to get worse at something if you practice. Have you ever noticed this? That if you so over the years, I got more efficient and recognized dead ends quicker and learned to. So I went from when I started taking 6 hours or so, 4 to 6 hours to get an idea, and then drawing it in another 3 or 4 hours. Now I can get an idea within an hour or so and do the drawing in 2 or 3 hours, I guess. But that's 20 years of practice. I think it's hard to describe or answer that, but I think it has to do with developing some kind of free associative capacity that's able to make disparate connections that don't readily jump to mind linearly, and you have some kind of capacity for primitive thinking.
I guess for the rest of you, the question is, how long does it take you to come up with twisted, perverse ideas? Anybody on the panel want to take another shot?
Well, I think first of all, you have to know what you're going to say every day. It's, usually, if I'm probably speaking for everybody here, if you're having difficulty coming up with a concept, it's probably you're having difficulty in the sense that you have nothing to say. You don't have an idea. You don't have your sights set on the target properly. So I think that's for me anyway, that's my primary concern. Other than that, I go through 5, 6 newspapers. I listen to Morning Edition, and I'm always listening and always watching what's going on, so that ultimately I have something to say every day. That's.
I don't have a problem with that. At 3 o'clock, if I don't have an idea, I just draw something anyway.
Some of you students may wonder whether that's a faculty principle here at the Kennedy School lecture system, too. All right, next question over here. Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you guys, after you spend the hour reading the papers, another hour or two thinking of the idea, and then maybe an hour or so doing out your thumbnail sketches, what is it in that sketch that says, this is going to do it, this is really funny? Do you show other office workers in the newspaper office, or do you sort of remove yourself from your own work somehow and say, yeah, this would go over great with the public?
Any of you call your moms, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of people use the staff in the office, show it around, see if anybody laughs. Usually they're really busy, so if they laugh, then you know you're really.
All right, over here.
I'd like to ask Mr. Danziger, in your collaborations with Alex Beam, what's the division of Alex Beam?
Oh yeah.
What's the division of labor there? Do you think through the ideas mutually, or does he come to you with the story idea, or how does it work?
For those of you who don't know, I work with a gentleman at the Globe, Alex Beam, and he's a columnist, and we've done some collaborative efforts, and it's about half and half. It really depends. Sometimes it depends on who comes up with the original idea, which is usually the hardest thing to do to make it stick. Some months ago, we did a piece that the New Yorker ran called "The Bob Dole Cabinet: Thinking Ahead."
Would you care to describe the Bob Dole Cabinet?
The assumption was.
Or was this meant for us to go out and buy the New Yorker? Is it still on the stands?
It was an idea that at some time we would be talking about who was going to be in the Bob Dole White House. The fortunes of the Clinton administration seemed so low at that time, so it's very hard to say. Collaborating is hard work, but it seems to work with us.
Over here.
Hi. Almost all of you mentioned that a lot of times your pieces are very controversial, and a lot of times there's a lot of negative reaction. And I was wondering what role this antagonism plays in the creative process. Do you write often to get people mad, or often does the idea that people are going to be upset by what you draw cause you sort of to temper whatever you're going to produce?
Well, I try not to think too much about how people are going to react. The reason why I do the cartoon that I do is from me. Often I'm surprised at the reactions people have. Some that I believe are going to be very offensive. People say, "Oh, that was cute," and then I feel terrible. But sometimes I feel like I did something that wouldn't offend anyone, and I get so many calls and people calling me all kinds of things. They go through a list. There's hardly any words that aren't curse words in there, and I say thank you very much. To me, that's a compliment, but I'm surprised. So
Do you save those on tape for slow days?
I wish I did. But I really don't think that often about how people are going to react to it. I try to be true to myself. That sounds a little corny, but it's true. I try to just, because I don't see the people. A cartoonist's job isn't really very glamorous. I sit at a desk. I have a telephone, they gave me that much. But it's just me and my paper, my brush, the ink, and about 600 newspapers stacked up all over my little office. And so it's my job. I want to go home at the end of the day, so that's what I think about.
Two questions. One is, what is the relation between a cartoonist and the newspaper that he or she works for? In other words, if it's a conservative newspaper and you are attacking the Republican Party, will this cause difficulties? The other question ties in with the previous question. To what extent do you cartoonists consider yourselves entertainers, as you implied perhaps, or to what extent or do you consider yourselves educators who hope to change public opinion? And if it's the latter, what signs are there, if any, that the public is indeed, that the opinions of the public is changed by the cartoons, by the satire?
Do you have a second question? Teasing, sorry, any of you.
Well, actually, at the Globe now, we have a new thing that's, I have a colleague, Dan Wasserman, and we split the week. They put a little slug on the top of the cartoon now that says Wasserman's view and my view. The idea, I think, is to create somewhat of a departure from the Globe itself, which in most cases works. But in the final analysis, they can still kill the cartoon. So if the publisher is embarrassed by the cartoon or doesn't want it to run, it doesn't run. So
on average, how many cartoons do any of you lose in a given year?
Well, the problem is you lose the real tough ones. I mean, I think that's, again, that depends on the individual paper and the individual publisher. It depends on how much courage the place has, who owns it. It depends on the issues. It depends on, how far you want to go. I think my own feeling is that it's that 5% that really makes a paper great.
I think, cartoonists are kind of like the mind sweeps for the First Amendment, in that because what we do is we're out on, we're plowing the North 40, and so, we're going to bring out the more repressive impulses. I think some of that has to do with the fact that his pictures, and images are more primitive than language. We dream before we speak. Cave paintings came before Gutenberg in the history of the species, and so there's something about language and words that editors are more comfortable with, and publishers. You can, it's more civilized, and drawings are primitive and threatening and wild and untamed, and the best ones are the kind that Paul is talking about. The very best ones are things that cause people to squirm, and it depends on where the publisher is, but of course freedom of the press belongs to those who own it, and it's their newspaper, as I'm always saying to my editor, it's your newspaper.
Hey, I'd like to note the cartoon that Lee Judge did when the Kansas City Star endorsed Ronald Reagan, and they let Lee draw a cartoon of himself holding his nose and pointing at the editorial. And I think that every cartoonist should point out the accolades that the paper got for running that cartoon.
The second part of my question had been whether you think of yourselves as entertainers primarily or as educators.
Depends on if you have an idea that day.
Cartoons always, it's kind of a confection too. It's a distillation of, and it's supposed to be fun. Most Americans are under the impression that if they look at a cartoon, it's supposed to be funny. They sometimes get surprised that it's not funny. But the editors have the problem in that they can't edit a cartoon. They can't throw in some qualifiers and some possiblies and some other
Allegedly.
adverbs. Yeah, allegedly. Right. All right.
We call them weasel words.
Weasel words. Yeah, exactly.
You know, the other thing is most newspaper people are word people. They don't deal with the visual very well.
And they're different tribes.
They are
Totally
much
different
different
tribes.
tribes, and that's a problem for us.
Yeah.
We are basically these simple picture people, and that's the way we think. So it's, and I think there's a trend today towards that kind of. Doonesbury had great success with the word, with a talking head. Unfortunately, his genius is not necessarily passed on to all these people trying to imitate him. And I think editors, being word people, kind of embrace that sort of concept, because again, it doesn't provide, or it doesn't throw out an image that's somebody
Unsettling.
is unsettling.
Yeah, that, you know, that's really true. I've noticed this with cartoons over the years. I noticed the kinds of people who select cartoons generally to run in papers, they think linearly, and they think, for instance, you'll notice the best cartoons are not necessarily run in the collections that you see, or the weekend, the weeks in review and stuff, because the kinds of people, and it's a tribe, who are in the jobs to do that, tend to think, for instance, that when you're reading the Boston Globe or any paper, they think that you're actually making a connection between what's in the cartoon and what's in the letter to the editor or something. They think linearly. In Newsweek, the cartoons that run will tend to be reflecting the story that's the cover story, the lead story. They're making all these kind of editor-type connections that no one else is. You're just looking at a cartoon, you're either entertained or you're not, but you're not doing that. But they think those ways, and they think everyone does. That's part of the kind of conflicts we run into.
So they keep a big stack of cartoons, and they look for a cartoon to illustrate their editorial on the op-ed
And
page.
nobody else cares.
I've been trying for years.
That's
I've been
the
trying
scary
for years to get them to write editorials to match the cartoons.
How do you all see the future of cartooning with the age of electronic media setting in upon us?
Well, I think I just ordered a Macintosh. I think, no, I'm serious. In fact, Tony Oth in Philadelphia scans his black and white drawing into a Mac to do his backgrounds, and that really is the wave. If I was suggesting to some young person, boy, I would make sure that they were technically capable as well as visually capable.
Was that the thrust of your?
No, I mean, how do you see it moving as we go online with newspapers and this kind of thing?
Well, I was going to say the greatest advancement in the fax machine. Last October, I faxed some cartoons back here from Phnom Penh, so I was able to travel and go to all sorts of different places. And if you can fax something from Phnom Penh and have it show up in Boston, reproducible, I think that's a great advantage.
Where'd you find that reproducible fax machine?
Well, there's in almost any place you go in the world, everybody's got fax machines, and you can just it frees you to be able to go and travel. So that's a great advantage.
Yeah, I was going to say that the syndicate that I work for, NEA, is about to go online in about a week and a half, and that opens up a whole new market for editorial cartoons. It's a great opportunity for me to reach people who normally wouldn't have access to my cartoons. The cartoons that are syndicated by my cartoons, which are syndicated, run in certain newspapers around the country, but there are large areas where they don't run. I'm working on that. But, so I think it's good. I think it's going to really turn things around. Hopefully it won't reduce the quality of the work. I still want to draw my cartoons. I know someday I'm going to be very old-fashioned in that, and people will probably laugh at me behind my back, but I like having a physical original. But we scan it. Right now we scan my cartoons and we transmit it to the syndicate as it is now. So it's just following along those lines. I'll be happy.
I think there's some satisfaction people derive from tactile engagement with things that is frustrated by computers. That there's something about not only drawing something, but reading a newspaper and smelling a newspaper that people need, but, that may be altered.
Oh, they'll get a fax that smells like a newspaper.
Like a newspaper.
Yeah.
Cartoons that look like cartoons. An impression of a cartoon.
Over here.
Okay, this one goes to all of you as well. It's my impression that there is a different style of political cartoons in different countries. Like, I come from Germany, and I think they're pretty lame, pretty polite, and in Great Britain they're pretty insulting, the other way around. So that would imply that there is a special code of conduct in one political area of the political cartoonist. First question, do you think that's true? Is this changing maybe with the internationalization? Second question, how does this come to be if it's true? Is it only the editor that's giving you kind of a threshold, what is possible and what not? Or is it your personal conviction? How's this going on?
Well, I think one thing, the libel laws are different in Britain than they are.
Watch yourself.
That sex is allowed or not, and in Germany you will never find this in a political cartoon, and in Great Britain, well, yeah, and or like the way you apply sarcasm. Oh.
Yeah, I think that cartoons are so close to the instincts, and they probably are expressing something essential about the national character of these places, all of the places you're talking about, the United States, and I noticed that in Britain and in other countries, there's something about the cartoons that seem kind of, it makes sense, so the same way that the freeways seem like they belong in the countries they're in. There's something, I noticed this with newspapers. Also, I want to say, I think it really starts at, with the cartoonist, like the question of what do we draw for, or all of these outside effects of libel laws or editors really are relevant. I mean, it comes down to, when I do a cartoon, I am trying to keep myself awake through the drawing. That is my goal, to be awake, and if you have, I have a pulse at the end of the drawing. If you hold a mirror under my nose, I'm awake. So, I mean, it's what you try to do in finding ideas, I think, is you go towards the heat. You go towards what is interesting and what you're, like any artist, any writer, I think you go towards what jazzes you and gets you moving. Because of that, it's so connected to the emotions and to the instincts. The best work, I think, and I think in all of these countries that the cartoons would be a real mirror, probably not only the newspapers, but of the kind of national spirit. I would expect, I see this when I see the cartoons from various countries.
Actually, there was one. We were in Hungary one time in a cartoon festival, and I was sort of going on about the 5% that I don't have. And a then Soviet cartoonist really raked me over the coals because basically he didn't have 95%. So, everything is relative, I guess.
Over here.
For an editorial cartoonist, as well as for some writers, being nationally syndicated is a mark of success, and I know most of you have had that experience. Do you find that the syndicates, they've been accused of sort of pushing everything into a mediocre or a common homogenized form? Do you find them restrictive, or them censoring things you do, or do you unconsciously think you tailor stuff to them because you're going to hit a national audience?
No, but all of these forces, editors, syndicates, I mean, they will if you let them. I mean, that's, any of these kind of bureaucratic forces will do whatever you allow. And I think the cartoons are measures of the cartoonist's constitution, their own spirits,
I mean, we're like prisoners of war. We're really always trying to go beyond the bounds. If you're doing your job right, you really are trying to be ahead of the wave. If your cartoons are reflective of what's happening today, they're okay. But really, the really good comments are ones that break ground, that break glass, that where people are a little taken back sometimes. And that's where it gets down to the courage of who's publishing it. What kind of an editor do you have? I mean, we all have different editors. If you have a kind of a person has no security with the front office, he's obviously not going to reinforce.
Scared, yeah.
If you have a publisher who has some courage, he hires people and puts them into those positions with that dictate.
Well, a syndicate is a business and a newspaper is a business, and I think they come from that, and from that direction, and I think it does have an effect.
Yeah, I don't feel any effect from the syndicate. I think the editor has much more power over that. I'm lucky because I have what I consider to be a rarity. It's an editor with a sense of humor. There's not that many of them, and I appreciate having worked with mine for 8 years. So, but I think editors have a great influence over cartoons, and I think I haven't been around a real long time in this, but from the people I've talked to who have been doing it for a long time, that's really changed. I think that they had a little less control over cartoonists before, and so I dress funny. That's one way. I'll play some games or something, and that's another thing in the newspaper also, is that they allow me to do things physically in the newspaper that they probably wouldn't allow anybody else to do because they don't know what to make of me.
And not only do they allow it, but they need it. I mean, this is because journalism is kind of about distancing emotion, and we're kind of the designated feelers, and we're kind of cast in the role of the clown or the court jester or whatever, and so if we didn't want to wear jeans or no ties, they would make us do that for them so that we are kind of loose and free and kind of the artist, the out there, for them, because they're so kind of restricted and restrained, and wear ties and stuff like that. So we get to kind of, and we have a green light to be kind of in that role.
You don't ever start from the point of view of what the editor's going to accept, though. I mean, you try to push it a little bit and see. You do what kind of all of a sudden there's a little zing. That's what I want to say, and this is the way I want to say it, and it may give the editor an ulcer, and and he'll say, well, okay, if you want the letters. But
none of us would ever want to be. None of us would ever want to be editors. It's a hideous job. I mean, it really is.
Our op-ed page editor keeps the syndicate thing comes to mind. There's a cartoonist she keeps a file of cartoonists that she would never print, but she loves them.
She wants to like them, but she don't want anybody else to see it.
You give the impression that not a lot of your editors would want you to be editors either.
I think I'll slip some into engraving one day.
Over here.
Yes, for the entire panel, what do you feel is the importance of having your sort of cartoon, little humor in today's highly political society?
What's
the importance of having your type of humor?
Having it be humorous? Well, I've said this before, not to this crowd. I've said this before that the problem now is that the politicians who are coming along now are sort of self-cartooning. It used to be they set the joke up, and then we delivered the punchline. But they're now such ridiculous characters and so crazy and so wild. I mean, you have people like Bob Dornan, you have people like James Trafficant, and so on and so forth. They're also so nuts that you almost have to be serious because it's the only growth area left. And
actually is really a problem for cartoonists because as reality becomes more and more surreal, as life becomes more cartoon, how do you top reality? Well, how do you cartoon a cartoon? It really is, we've hit hyperspace with hyperbole in public in this tabloid time, and it's just, it's really a trick. I mean, things are, the every day is bizarre, and the bizarre is every day. I mean, it's a real problem. I can't make up anything any more weird than what you see on, Sally Jesse Raphael, or on the evening news. I mean, Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton is kind of like Bill Clinton's evil twin. And so,
all right, over here.
Where would you rather be placed, in the editorial page or on the comic strip section?
The front page, I think.
In color.
Yeah, in color. Those are the kinds of things that I don't think are that. I don't even think about that. Editors think about things like that, and they have to categorize things and put things and make those distinctions. And it's important for organizing. I'm sure it's important, but it doesn't, doesn't seem to register on my.
I think I'd like to be on the television listings page. Everybody watches these.
You'd like to be read, I think. That's what people want.
Over here.
I'd like to get back to the question that a gentleman raised earlier, which is, for any of you, is there a time when you have felt gratified that you have influenced our opinions in the public, or really wanted a reaction that you were successful at getting? I tend to believe, just historically looking at the work that Grosch and Hartfield did during World War II, that was so much critical of Hitler, and that it was so evident in the Germany at the time that actually played a very influential social role. So I'm curious if in your work, if you have ever felt that is possible, or something that you have actually done. Or if you think that they did play an effective social role in World War II.
I actually don't think the cartoon is what it used to be. I think it augments a lot of other things out there. I mean, television is really the thing that people seem to live and die on, and that's too bad. I hope that there'll always be something printed, but I think we're just part of this little thing that sticks on the back of people, and hopefully causes irritation every so often.
Yeah. I would like to think that what I do affects the way governments run. I would like to think that I have a part in that, and then another part of me says, God help us all if people are looking towards an editorial cartoonist like myself. So I think it's a mixture. Sometimes I do go through stages where I really want to be addressing that. I really want to be more serious about it. And then there are times when, as the gentleman said, I do feel more like an entertainer. And I think that has a very, people look, and when they're in shock when I say that. In a way, we do have to be entertainers, or else no one's going to pay any attention to us. There are realities in what we do, and I've always enjoyed humor. I've always laughed. I loved the Little Rascals when I was a little kid. I still love the Little Rascals. So these things find their ways into my cartoons. Very often I'll do a cartoon that shows the Brady Bunch. I did one with the O.J. Simpson trial, the lawyers. I did the Brady Bunch. So
there's always the Addams Family when you want to do Congress, too.
Well, yeah, I did the Addams Family for the Michael Jackson wedding. But it's important to make a point, but it's also important to realize that I'm just a cartoonist. I have a viewpoint, I have an opinion, I'd like to think it counts, but I try to be entertaining along with it, so there's a balance.
The humor is the hook, and if you can make somebody mad and still be funny, if you can needle or big.
I want to follow up just a question that was related to the function of television, the impact of television. You all work as visual artists in a print medium. Do you think that there's a place for your kind of cartooning in television? And if so, have you thought about how to get is it a half-hour format? Is it a shorter break format? Have you all thought about it, particularly?
Well, there's been some editorial cartooning tried just in a very minor way on television, but the sponsors and the programs don't want anything with any.
Mm-hmm. I actually did it at Channel 7 for a year.
That upsets anybody.
Where you did animation or you did stills?
There were wasn't it U.S. who was that? Newsweek.
Newsweek reprinted them,
I had some. They animated still cartoons. There were a few of them for a time. I had some in there.
I actually worked at Channel 7 once a week, and I was given a slot on the 6 o'clock news. And I'd have like a minute to, and it was kind of an interesting process, because you'd do the cartoon Wednesday night, and, the guy would send a crew over to my studio Thursday morning. I'd have written a script and memorized it, and we'd shoot it. The problem was it couldn't be of anything substantial, because they aren't into offending people. Unless it was an editorial, or they had the possibility of rebuking it, challenging it. And most of them don't want to do that. So, but ultimately, it was one of those items that they used to do in television that they no longer do, because it was like a little filler that kind of.
It's a different thing when it's on television than it is when it's in a newspaper. You know, there's something again about holding it, looking at it, studying it, not studying
that is pure entertainment.
And unless it's animated, if it's a still cartoon and you move it.
It's difficult to make work in that kind of medium.
It's like putting novels on
It's a
film.
band
It's a different.
John Chase in Louisiana, New Orleans. John
Yeah.
Chase did some of the first, I think, editorial cartoons on television. He did quite a few of them. And they're still, doesn't Charlie, somebody does them in Knoxville?
There is another guy. I think you could do it with a paint box, but the real issue is, what are you going to do? I mean, you don't have the latitude that you have in the print in a newspaper, because
It's on television, it needs animated.
well, it needs to. It just can't be tough. It just can't be of any substance.
All right.
Forget it.
Over here.
Hi, I think we all appreciated your comments earlier this evening about how Newt Gingrich provides a full employment act for editorial cartoonists. I was wondering if each of you could take a moment to tell us about your favorite politician to satirize, why you like to satirize them, and what particular body feature you choose to accentuate on that particular politician.
Yeah, I really don't. I don't have any favorites.
He's from the medical school doing anatomy.
You know, they're all caricaturable, and they all, they all have different features, and I just don't think approach it like that. Do you guys have favorites?
Well, I think Pat Buchanan's going to become my favorite.
You can keep him.
I'd say they're all very interesting. I think Phil Graham is
Oh, yeah.
borderline hysterical.
Would you describe him as Molly Ivins does, as the snapping turtle?
I'm always happy to find that Phil Graham is my age. That's enough punishment for him right there.
Yep. Question back here.
This is a question for all of you. I was wondering if you had ever had a cartoon that had ran and then you regretted that it had ran, and maybe why or what the cartoon was. Or you could just say no.
I did, but I can't remember what it was. It must not have been too bad.
No, I've had cartoons with misspellings that I wish I never read.
Yeah, that's it. You spell it wrong.
I've had cartoons that I regretted didn't run. I haven't had many that got in.
A cartoon can die on the vine. When I remember B.B. Rebozo was going to testify in the Watergate hearings, and I went out of town, left the cartoon and left town, and B.B. didn't testify. And the editor rewrote a line for it, and it made no sense at all. I regret that one ran.
If there are no further questions, I want to say thank you very much to this exceptional panel this evening of political cartoonists who've come in some cases quite a distance to join us for an evening of discussion of political cartooning here at the Kennedy School. On behalf of all of us, thank you very much. Not at all. I enjoyed that. we don't. One of the few times when we're intentionally funny at the forum.
We're doing it about 12.
Ask him. Yeah. Please go right ahead. Absolutely. Come around right around here.
I'd love to do that. Would that fit in with the speech?
Something you great.
It was great.
Was that all right?
Thank you. That was
terrific.
Yeah.
Good.
You were funny. See?